You are now about to start recording the shir. When you are finished, please hang up.
Okay, so it's hard to believe that Pesach is actually in our rearview mirror. My mother, Leah Shalom, used to say that, she used to say this every night, as soon as the Seder was over. She said, this is the cycle of Klal Yisrael. She said, metanzt, mepitzt, metzailt, meklukt, and meblust. I will give you a free interpretation. He said, metanzt, we dance on Purim, we clean on Pesach, or at least we try to stay out of the way as others are cleaning. Then we count Svira, we cry over the Churban, and we blow Shofar. So if you want to touch up the cycle of Klal Yisrael throughout the year, it's metanz, mepitz, metzailt, meklukt, and meblust. We dance, we clean, we count, we cry, and we blow. Now, there's a klal abom and a prat abom and a klal. You know, the whole tzibur of Klal Yisrael is dancing on Purim and cleaning on Pesach, counting Svira, crying during the 3 weeks, and blowing Shofar in Rosh Hashanah. The problem is, or the challenge is, I should rather say, that in our personal lives, there are also times in our life that we're dancing, cleaning, crying, and blowing. Now, when it coincides with what the tzibur is doing, if you're dancing on a personal simcha when everyone else is dancing for Purim, that's great. When you're cleaning when they're cleaning, and you're counting when they're counting, crying when they're crying, blowing when they're blowing, so you're in the tzibur. The challenge is that when in your personal life you're dancing while everyone else is crying, or everyone else is crying, or vice versa, or you're blowing when everyone else is counting. So that's very difficult. It's very difficult because as the cycle of dancing, cleaning, and counting, and crying, and blowing goes, and it doesn't coincide with your life, and you have to get out there, and you have to say, no, Shavuos is coming, and we're so looking forward to Kabbalah Torah. And you go to sleep at night, and you're tossing and turning, because there's something else that's really keeping you up at night, which has, in your mind, nothing to do with Kabbalah Torah, so how do you coincide? Not to mention the challenge if within a family you have one spouse that is blowing and the other is crying, or one spouse that is dancing and the other is cleaning. So how does that work? How do you get everyone together? We know that the days of Sfira, there are 49 days, are broken up into 7 weeks. And the 7 weeks, those that daven generally Nusach Svard, there's a Rabbinish Leilam to say, and each of the 49 nights corresponds to a different Sfira. So the first week is Chesed, which is Avraham Avinu. Second week is Gvura, power, that's Yitzchak. Third week is Teferes, that's beauty. That's the Kedusha of Yaakov Avinu, which is a combination of Chesed and Gvura. Week number 4 is Netzach, right? Dida Netzach. That's the power of Moshe Rabbeinu. Week number 5 is Hayd, the song and the praise of Aaron HaKayin, the beauty. Week number 6 is Yisaid. Midas Yisaid represents the battle against our Taivas, that which corresponds to Yosef Atzadik. And week number 7 is Malchus, which is the majestic aura of King David of David HaMelech. However, there are 49 days, not just 7 days. So there's a dominant midah each week. In other words, the first week is the midah of Chesed. The first night that we count Omer, which is the second night Pesach, is Chesed Shebechesed. Because we're not deserving of going out of Mitzrayim, and the Rebbe Hashem gave it to us simply as a gift. The next day is Gvura Shebechesed. The entire first week is Chesed. And then week number 2, as we are in this particular week, is the week of Gvura. Which is the week of where Ezel Gibar HaKayvish is Yitzray. And I think everybody would admit, as the weather gets hot, it is a week that requires Gvura on the street, as we watch our eyes and deal with the after Pesach blues and so on. But it's not just a week of Gvura. There's Chesed Shebegvura. And so what's tonight? Let's try to focus on what tonight is. Tonight is Hoid Shebegvura. Hoid is praise and song, the midah of Aaron HaKayin, within the context of the week of Gvura. Now, how can we kind of translate that? You have to realize that these 49 midas, meaning Chesed, Shebechesed, till Malchus, Shebemalchus, corresponds to the 49 different ways that we view the Rebbeinu Shalom. When you are in a good mood, and you're happy, you view God in one light. When you are, Chas v'shalom, I shouldn't say you, but when a person is down and in the dumps, then he views God in a different light. So really what it is, not the way we view the Rabbi Shalom, it's how the Rabbi Shalom relates to us. And it's never the same. And the truth is that even within the realm of Chesed Shebechesed, it subdivides even more. And the truth is, the Svarim say that there's no moment in your life that it's exactly the same. And that is why Reb Chaim Volozhiner says that every Shmon Esrei that you daven in your life, there never was such a Shmon Esrei since Sheshes Mebereshis, and there never will be such a Shmon Esrei. Because the emotional mix in your life at a given moment is never the same. It constantly changes. You know, some of us are suffering post-traumatic things here from Pesach. I think particularly parents. This was a rough Pesach for parents because there was no Shabbos Chalamoid. Now, as you know, when there's a Shabbos Chalamoid, so you have one day that the kids schlep you around. But when you had, as we had this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you used to get off Erev Yom Tov, but then sometimes we'll say one of the spouses sends out the other one with the kids on Erev Yom Tov. So really, that's 4 days of Chalamoid. So I think there should be a support group for parents, how to deal with this. I want to go here, I want to go there, and you schlep, and you go, and you pay, and you park, and we should have done this, and we should have done that. I'll share with you some of my wonderful reflections for Chalamoid Pesach. When I was Zoicha, Baruch Hashem, we went to the Bronx Zoo, the Botanical Gardens, and the Transit Museum. Uncle, were you ever in the Transit Museum?
The Bronx Zoo.
You were in the Bronx Zoo. How many years ago?
I wasn't in the cage, don't worry.
Okay. I hear.
No.
Okay. So let me tell you, the last time I was in the Bronx Zoo was 16 years ago. Okay? I go every 16 years. That's basically my minute. First with kids, at 8 o'clock we'll see weiter. I want to tell you that things have dramatically changed. To the best of my recollections, now I'm serious about this, 16 years ago, the animals were in the cages, and the people were outside looking at the animals. Do you know that it's the other way around now? No, I'm serious. Like the tigers, you go into this room, and you watch through a window the tigers running around. And basically, I'm trying to watch over there, and of course, as every good Jew, I went on the day that it's free. So there's a big crowd. I said, so here we are. I said, what's going on over here? And same for the gorilla and everything else. I said, wait a second, the people are in the cage, and the animals are roaming around free. I said, whoa, that's like a little bit of a difference. Which also means there's a tremendous walk. I think that it's like a 3 mile, I don't know how long, it's like a 3 mile walk from place to place, as I was trudging around. When we finally got all the way, and when you get to the other side, we didn't see the flamingo bird. We got to go back for that,
They'll fly away.
Yeah, they'll fly away. When I finally got to the other side, and I was about to sit down, I like dozed off for a second, and I had this dream, like if you forgot the same baracha, you have to walk the whole zoo again, and something like that. Like was in my. Now let me tell you something. Talking about dreams, if you go to the Bronx Zoo and the Botanical Gardens and the Transit Museum, okay, and then you come into Achron Shel Pesach and you overdose on the Knedlach and the chant a little bit, that is not very conducive for dreams. I got to tell you, boy, I had a doozy. I try to imagine this. This is after 3 days with the kids, and with Enlach was screaming, with yelling, with back and forth, and everything that was going along there. So I fell asleep. I don't know, I'm kind of embarrassed, but I'll share it with you because we're only here with friends. Imagine dreaming Shabbos afternoon, okay, that you're in a rainforest on a disabled vintage 1929 F train that is stuck between these like knedlach that are around and around. And there's a guy there there's this big poster, this guy screaming that unless we do something massive, the elephants are going to be extinct. And that, you're going to be here until the 2nd Avenue subway is going to be completed. Because in the Transit Museum, they had a whole exhibit about that. And I was like, whoa, really woke up. It took me a second to get out of that. I never understood, talking about the 2nd Avenue subway. When was the first time you heard they're making the 2nd Avenue subway? I think it was my upsharing. It was like way back. See, I don't understand what the whole problem is with Iran. Okay? Because I think they should do a switch and it'll solve all the problems. You won't need sanctions. You won't need bombings. They should get the company that's building the 2nd Avenue subway to build a missile in Iran. They should get the company that's building the missile in Iran to do the 2nd Avenue subway. That means that by next week you'll have a train to ride in, and as far as the missiles go, in 6 hours it won't be ready. I don't know why. It sounds like a very... I will note one interesting thing. In the Transit Museum, they have these... Well, they have the old vintage trains, and then they go through the 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s. And I could not help but noticing the difference in the advertisements. Do you realize that in the 1930s trains, you can actually look at the pictures. Everyone is fully tznius. And as it gets to the 60s, it gets a little, the 70s, by the time you get to the 90s, you got to take off your glasses already. So it almost like shows you, as you're walking from car to car, like where the world is, what it's all about. So I took my Einiklach, a bunch of them, and we sat down in each car, and I told them a story about a train in that era. And so that was like a nice little connection over there. It changes. And I tried to explain to them as we're going from car to car, and I reminisced on my own life by the time we got to the, well, I have to get to the part where I was born. So like when we got to the 1930s or whatever it was. But, all right. You know, the 60s car, those old World Trade Centers, says, you know, I remember as a little boy going with my father and mother, and I remember where we were going, and I would reminisce with them as we were going from one car to the other, which was like approximately in advance of about 10 or 15 years, and telling them where I was in my life. And I remember here going to Eretz Yisrael the first time, and I was on such a train making the thing, and the first thing in Shas, on such a train. You know, you look through your life and you realize it's so massively different. It's not pshat that we live, 70 years, 80 years. No, we live only 1 minute. That minute never was and never will be again. The environment changed, life changes. It goes from chesed to gvura to tferes netzach. And that's why it's so sad if you're missing part of your life. There must be an appreciation for every second, for every moment. It means so much. It means so much. I was listening in the car on the way, a tape from Rabbi Miller, and he was saying, a person's dying, and he says, Rabbi Shalom, life is so good, why are you taking it away? And the Rabbi Shalom says, I never heard when you were alive you were saying that it's so good. An appreciation for every moment. We live in a time where we're so angry about the past, and we're so anxious about the future. What about the Ata? The Ata is a lashon of tshuva. The Ata ma Hashem alekecha shel meimach. Why is Ata a lashon of tshuva? Because the only way we can really identify ourselves is to say, this moment in my life never was and never will be. Let me appreciate it. The Gra says that there are 10, I gotta say, one of my Einiklach in the train, one of the later model trains, and they had the straps hanging down, as they call strap hangers. So he was so excited, they put monkey bars in the trains. And he's like going from one to the other, and then the guard came in and said, excuse me, please, you can't climb on that. So I take him off, and he goes, so why did they put it here? So I said to myself, in our lives also, we also ask Rabbi Shalom, you're not letting me do it, why did you put it here? So you don't understand why it's here, So the Gra says, interestingly enough, that in the last 1,000 years before Mashiach comes, so each 100 years corresponds to one of the 10 Chumashim in Devarim. And someone once wrote a whole sefer and shows how in Chumash Devarim, how different events of the correspond to exactly where we are. Every generation has a different set of nisyonos. And I think that's very important when we talk about today. No generation was ever tested like this with the internet, online, and nisyonos. You have to do you have to dress black, yilbush chayrim, and you have to travel to some remote place. We grew up in the shtetl. What do you want from us today? Look at the nisyonos, look at the test that we have, just sitting down in our... I say, no, God put us here today. We are the generation of these nisyonos. This is us. The previous generation, look, you read what happened before World War II, World War I. It was all ideology, communism and socialism and all the stuff that's going to save the world, the Bundes and the communists. And people were willing to die for it. They were giving everything away for it. Today, who cares? Right? Who cares about economy? Who cares about it? We worry a little bit about the gas pump price. Right? So what's the sign of today? The sign of today is, as we're entering the last, in other words, 5,700, so we're in the 6,000th year, that's Midas HaYesod. What is Midas HaYesod? The Midah of Yosef HaTzadik. The Taiva today, the Nisyonos that never existed before. Taiva was always there, but it was never as easy to access. Simchas HaChayim, which we lose because of engagement in Taiva. A sense of self-worth, a recognition that people should have. These are the Yesodos. So really, especially during the days of Svira, every Marav, every Shachris, every Mitzvah is so important. And in this, let's talk about tonight, the night of Hoid Shebegvura. there's also the Ana B'Kayach. The Ana B'Kayach is there's also those that say it. There's Lam Netzeich Ben Ginos, and after the first pasuk, there's 49 words, and there's each word corresponds to a different night. If you will take note, and in the middle pasuk of Yismachu, which is the key pasuk in the Tehillim, each letter corresponds to a different night. And then there's the Shem of Ana B'Kayach. The Tefillah of Ana B'Kayach is a tefillah of the Tanner of Nechunya ben Akana, which cries out, it's such a beautiful tefillah that cries out the most inner depth of our feelings toward HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's a tefillah based on, there is God's name that has 42 letters, the Shem Mem Beis. And tonight is the night of Tareinu. Hashem, please purify us. You see, Aaron HaKayin, he is the midah of Hoyd. Aaron HaKayin does the Avoid in the Beis HaMikdash. Aaron HaKayin benches Klal Yisrael, Negina, and a certain Anova. So that's great. It's great to get up there, all these beautiful midas of Aaron HaKayin. Oh, he's just the Zang bench, Yivarecha Hashem, I love everyone around me, I'm so happy. But what if you're not so happy? What if it takes Gvura? What if things in life aren't going your way? So this mixture of Hoyd, Sheba Gvura, this is where it is today. Now, Shlomo HaMelech, as we know, had 1,000 wives. Right? His phone bill came with one of those big tractor trailers connected 6-1 to the other. So the reason Shlomo HaMelech had 1,000 wives because he married a wife from a princess from every country. The Ben Ish Chai says he saw there was going to be a galus. When Shlomo built the Beis HaMikdash, he knew it wasn't going to last. He built a series of subterranean tunnels, which eventually Yoshiyahu HaMelech hid the Aron inside. And Shlomo was kind of hoping that if he would marry a princess from every nation, and then he would convince them to turn over and believe in Hashem, it would take away the need for Galus and for Klal Yisrael to have to wander throughout the nations. The plan did not work, and it was a dangerous plan because he technically violated what the pasuk says, L'yarba L'nashim. Now, out of all of Shlomo's wives, one of them was Zaycha to be the mother of the chain of Malchus Beis David. Does anyone know which one of his wives that was? Well, Bathsheba was David's wife, right? So she was Shlomo. It was Nama, right? Now, why did Nama get picked out of the 1,000 wives that she would be the one that would be Zaycha for the future? Each one of the stories, Rus and like he said, Bathsheba was all a story for itself. So the Chidah brings in the Sefer Midbar Kademis, he brings a fascinating thing. Now we know that Shlomo HaMelech, I'm not going to focus too much on it tonight, but maybe a different time, that there's the story with Ashmedai, and that Shlomo had to build the Beis HaMikdash. And in order to build the Beis HaMikdash, he could not use a saw. So how do you cut if you can't use a saw? So they told him about a certain worm, and if you get this worm, the shami worm, and you put it, everything splits in half. I never understood how you pick up the worm, but anyway, must be a way to do it. So Al Kolpanim, maybe you stun it beforehand, I don't know. But, so who has the worm? The worm says a whole story that a certain bird has it, and they went to get it, and they put a piece of glass over the nest, and the bird got the worm to split the glass, and then they grabbed the worm. And when the bird saw what happened, the bird committed suicide because the worm fell into human hands and the bird was very frightened. Oy, what did I do? I could have destroyed over here the entire civilization. So Shlomo HaMelech, at the end, who told him the secret? Ashmedai, the king of Shadim, told him the secret. And how did Shlomo get Ashmedai? He had a ring with Hashem's name on it, and he locked. When the Ashmedai fell asleep, the Gemara says a whole story how they got him to fall asleep. He sent Ben Yod, and he emptied out the water, and he gave him wine, and he saw the wine, and he said Shlomo says not to drink wine, but the wine tastes really good, so he drank it anyway. The Altaf and the Vardik said, Nish to drink and wine, not to drink wine. There are many taimim. But the time of wine is better than everything, right? Overrides it. So Ashmedai, time means both flavor and taste. So Ashmedai drinks the wine, and he gets drunk, he falls asleep. The Ben Yoda says, the morale also says, doesn't mean mamish sleep, it means in a different state. And they lock him with a chain, and they put on this ring, Shlomo's ring that has Hashem's name on it. And when Ashmedai wakes up, he could have clearly broken the chain, but he can't break Hashem's name. So he's taken, and he gets the Shami worm, and that's how Shlomo builds the Beis HaMikdash. And at one point, Ashmedai says to Shlomo, he says, you conquered the entire world, what do you need me for? Let me go. So Shlomo says to him, they're talking back and forth, and then the exact sequence of the Gemara, you look it up, but at the end, Shlomo says, I don't see your great power, Ashmedai, king of the Shadim, king of the ghosts. He says, you take off this ring and I'll show you. So you would think that the wisest man of all worlds is not going to fall for that one, right? But when the Rebbe wants us to make a mistake, we make a mistake. And snap, And Ashmedai grabs Shlomo. He says, I'll show you how strong I am. And he throws him, whatever this means. I got it to Gemara, you have to understand the secret meanings. But whatever it was, Shlomo winds up many, many years away from Yerushalayim. And he even meets somebody and says, where's Yerushalayim? The guy says, Yerushalayim, never heard of it. So he knew he was in big trouble. And for 7 years, the Gemara says Shlomo was a melech al makloi. All he was king over his stick. That's the only thing he had, his walking stick. Although the Kotzka points out that the Lashon of the Gemara is very empowering, because Shlomo didn't give up. He said, I'll be a king over my stick. 1 second I was king over Yerushalayim in the world. And now if all God gave me is my stick, I'm not going to get depressed. I'll be king over my stick. So he brings there a medrash to Chidah that Shlomo wound up by a certain king, and he got a job as a waiter. It's a meltzer. Meltzer's a waiter. Okay. And
that's where he got the name.
Yeah. And he's working as a waiter, and one of the daughters of the king, sees him, and she winds up marrying him. And that was Nama. And Shlomo said, why do you want to marry me? I'm a nothing. He says, I'll never get back to Yerushalayim. I'll be derech hateva. Nobody will ever believe me who I am. I'll never get back there. Why do you want to marry me? And she saw within him greatness. She saw within him that he's a king over his stick. She knew he was a person, somehow there was something mystical about his history, that he went from being king of the world and he lost everything. And instead of jumping off the cliff, instead of allowing himself to sink into the abyss of depression, he said, I'll be king, I'll do whatever it takes to survive, and I'll thank God for life. She said, I want to marry you. He said, I want to tell you, I don't have a future. She said, I don't care. She married him. And Gemara says one day he went fishing, or she went fishing, and she caught a thing, and Ashmedai apparently threw the ring into the water, and she opened the fish, and there was the ring, and she gave it to Shlomo, and with that ring, Shlomo found his way back to Yerushalayim, as the Gemara tells us that he got to Yerushalayim, and he said, I'm Shlomo. And they said, sure you are, right? They say the story about Paul Reichman. I don't know if it's true, but they say that he walked up 7 flights to visit his mother on a Shabbos afternoon on a very hot day. And by mistake, he walked into the 8th floor instead of the 7th floor, which happened to be the psychiatric ward. And he walked in, and the door slammed behind him, and he started banging to get out. And the guard came, what's your problem? He says, open up the door, I want to get out. Oh, really? He says, you don't understand. He's standing there schwitzing away. He says, I'm Paul Reichman. And the guard says, yeah, and I'm Queen Elizabeth, he says, go back to your room. So, yeah. Al Kopanim, so Lemaise, he comes, he says, I'm Shlomo. They said, right, you're Shlomo, right, what else? Go ahead. Somebody told me this once about a bus in the Rebbetzin, and the guy came in and said, I'm Mashiach.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, right? Getting more exciting than a minute, right? So she said, hey, have a coffee, Mashiach, and just sit down and relax a little bit. Someone said to her, I called her, how do you, she says, why don't you get like excited? A guy like that walks in, he's deranged. She said, after the 5th guy this morning, you get used to it after a while. He says, okay. So, the guy walks into an insane asylum, and he says, he goes over and says, everyone looks a little wacky. He says, you look normal. He says, can you tell me about everyone here? Like, why I see it? Why is that guy? He said, that guy thinks he's Mashiach. So he says to him, how do you know he's not Mashiach? He says, I'm Eliyahu and Navi, I should know, right? All right. So Al Kapanim, like that one, Uncle Yaakov?
Yeah,
that's good, right?
Maybe I'm the one too.
That's what could be. We never know. We all treat you with their hearts, because
I'm afraid.
That's right. Right. Those that know don't say. I know. So in any event, so Shlomo comes back and he says, I'm king of Yerushalayim. So then the Sanhedrin said after a while, they said like this. Usually in a Shulchan, one day he's the king of Yerushalayim, the next day he's the secretary of, I don't know. Every day the same story. Let's check into it. So they went to Ben Yod. And the bottom line is they went to Ashmedai, who was disguised as Shlomo Melech, who was able to assume a human form. The one thing he could not assume is his feet had the feet of, right? What does the Gemara say? Chicken feet. So, and Ashmedai and whatever, and he showed him the ring, and Ashmedai got frightened and he ran off. And Shlomo would take over the Malchus, and Nama would now become a queen. But why was she Zaycha that Malchus Beis David should come out of her? Because she was willing to be the queen, not when Shlomo was willing to be the queen. She was willing to be the queen when it looked like the world was over for him. I want to, and really that is the Koyach of Sfira. The Koyach of Sfira is our life changes. It goes from Chesed to Gvura. There are contradictions. It's supposed to be Chesed tonight. Why do I have to go to Gvura? I'm supposed to have a Simcha. Why are there complications? Why can't I get along? Why are people getting in my way? I want to get over certain things. Why is it still there? That's what the Sfira is. And we say, keep going, keep counting, keep moving. I want to tell you a great story. There's a Yid, the Damas in my shul, a tzaddik of a Yid, and I say this story with his permission, obviously. And many of you may know him. He had a wonderful family, his children are wonderfully talented, alles ein gesund und stark. His name is Rabbi David we Elgus was gesund. And his people know him as Pancho. Pancho Elgus sounds like someone that came from the Wild West with two straight shooters. So what happened was, this Yid, I want to tell you, he's retired a while, and he sits and learns from morning to night. It doesn't just sit and learn with falling asleep over a cup of tea. With chavrusas, koil, Torah, mamish, all this medrash is just his life, the energy of Halavida, the 15-year-olds should be that way. And he wants everyone in shul to come to Shachris. He's doing every day, he calls and asks, I want you around Shachris on time, and he pays for a koil biker. So I once asked him, I said, what do you have with Shachris? You're making everyone to come. He says, if not for Shachris in the morning, he says, I wouldn't be here. So he tells me this amazing story. He says that many years ago, many years ago, Tarvadas sent a delegation to South America to look for two people. To look for Bacharim and for money. I don't know how much money they got, but they did bring back 150 Bacharim from countries like Colombia and Brazil and Argentina and Mexico. And he says they came, and they did their best, and for the most part, he told me, he said, how did they get you to come to Tarvadas? You grew up in the streets of Bogota. I said, I never even saw a yarmulke, he said. I know nothing about Judaism. So what did they tell you? Well, the guy that came did a good job. He told us there's a pool. He showed us pictures of the mikveh, and he said, look at this big baseball field. He showed us we didn't realize it was Lee Avenue, like on a Sunday morning. The kids were playing on the street. And so we came. He said that it was a disaster. He says disaster. And imagine a bunch of kids in your class that speak only Spanish. And the Rebbe doesn't even speak English. So what did they do? They took those older Rebbeim that didn't know how to speak English and only spoke Yiddish and put them into that class. Why? Because they figured, listen, they're not going to give a unit anyway. You may as well give them there. Why should I give them to kids, right? So with the exception, he said, of one Rebbe that he had that was absolutely amazing, that somehow managed to bypass all the language barriers. What he said he came, they fahered him. He said, Rabbi, I forgot who he said, fahered him. When he came to the yeshiva, he said to him, Gemara? He didn't know what he was talking about. Asavasu Gemara, whatever, So he said, no, Chumash, no. He says, Aleph Beis, he says, he knows. What do you know? He says, I know how to dance. And he grabs him and he told me the niggin that he sang, a kookaroo, something like that. I don't know, something along those lines. And he said, okay, you're accepted. And he was there in the yeshiva. He says, it was a disaster. He says, at night they were living it up. I mean, imagine from Bogota coming to New York. He said there was an old dormitory mashgiach. He would come and close the lights. He says he'd coming back to check in a half an hour. Of course, they didn't speak English anyway, so it didn't make a difference. He said they would all pile up their pillows and their blankets, and he would walk in at night and he would report it's so quiet and peaceful. He didn't know the only thing on those beds were the blankets and pillows, and they were covered up like someone was sleeping there, and these guys were out in the town. So at the end of the year, they decided, guess what, that the yeshiva was going to be very happy to sponsor a return trip back to Latin America. So perhaps they can take some of the many things they learned about Yiddishkeit and spread it right to there, So they're going bacher by bacher, and they're saying, you're going back, because we can't afford you, and you're going back. And the guys really wanted to stay. They said, listen, we can't do this. So he said they came to him. This is the story that he told me. And he was saying there was Rav Shor Zechon Levracha, Rav Gedalia Shor Zecher Tzadik Levracha, and whoever was in charge said, all right, him. He says, this is, what's your hesitation about him? He says, he was called Pancho then. So he says, he came, as much as everything was going on over here, he was there for Shachris every morning on time. Okay. So Rav Shor said that if he has that in him, I want him to stay. And somebody else said, him, he's the biggest trouble of all them, he's the ringleader. No. If he was there for Shachris every single day, I want him to stay. Lamaisa, here you have a Yid who's retired, who sits and learns from morning to night, and a beautiful family of Marbitze Torah, unbelievable. Why? Because he was there for Shachris. So I asked him, well, why did you come to Shachris? If you were like, he says that he had this mile in his life. That when he was doing a good thing, he never dropped it like, what's the point of me doing it? I'm not doing anything else anyway. What's the point of me keeping on learning at night? Nothing good is happening in my life. I'm learning already I have a Seder at night already a whole year. Nothing is happening. And then I become a chassan, I thought God will pay back. He said, I had this thing. Once I did a good thing, I stuck with it. So he says, you see, the Shachris saved my life. The Shachris made me who I am. And one of the things that the Yetzer Hara likes to do is we have hoid. Yeah, I'm going to learn. I'm going to have a chavrusa. I'm going to be nice. Whatever you're makabel upon yourself. And then comes Gevura. Comes the Yetzer Hara and says, nah, it's not working anyway. What's the point of investing in it? What's the point of doing it? I read this thing in the Bronx Zoo, which was quite amazing. I'd rather reading the signs more than looking at the animals. At least they're closer to each other. You have to walk that far. So they're the baby elephant. What they do is they wrap a chain around the baby elephant. And the baby elephant can't get out of the chain. As much as he tries, he can't. Now, a couple of years down the road, when this elephant is like 6 tons and 50 times the size, he says this chain is nothing. All he has to do is burp and the chain is gone. All different directions. But you know that they keep the chain around the elephant and he never walks away. And why? Because in his psychic, he already knows he can't do it. So it doesn't occur to him, I know you couldn't do it when you were little and you were a tiny Zisa baby that weighed only 150 pounds.
Only 6,
Yeah. But now that you're weighing 3 tons, you know what I mean? You can take this chain and the Empire State Building and smash it down. But he already knows he can't do it, so he doesn't try. And so think about the lesson. How many times in our life do we feel, it doesn't work, I try to learn, I try to daven, I'm going to start saying everywhere, I'll daven the siddur, I'll bench, I'll watch my eyes, it doesn't work. Keep going. You keep going. What didn't work yesterday could work today. What didn't work your whole life can work now. Every second is a new moment. That's what the sphere is all about. So then the birdhouse, I saw this. Okay? They all different kind of eggs of birds. It's very fascinating. But one thing caught my eye. It says over there that the texture, okay, of every bird egg is perfect. It has to be strong enough that when the mother bird sits on it, it won't crack the bird. And it has to be tender enough that when the baby becomes mature, it can break out. And as much as they try to imitate that, the scientists, they can't get it perfect. Think about that. How the Rabbi Shalom creates us. Isn't that it? We're tough enough to deal with the pressures of life. And you have to know that the Rabbi Shalom stops it just short. You could still break out of it, whatever it is. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can make that perfect mix. You know, we have the whole Garachka now with the Titanic. It's after 100 years.
Yeah.
The Titanic.
Yeah.
Uncle Yank, do you remember it? No, okay.
I don't want to see that.
You heard it too much already. Right. Now, nothing about the movie. Don't about the real story.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's true. That's all true.
So, it's like you read all these things that were coming out, and there's mahalach, you know, there were 16 chambers and 5 waterproof rooms, and the captain made this great thing, and he said even God can't sink this ship, which is not a very good thing to say. And then there's a whole Torah. The whole Torah goes like this. That the ship, you know, a million things had to happen for the ship to sink. It had to be grazed on the side. If it would have gone head first into the iceberg, they say it would have not sunk. They put in phosphorus into the iron epis, it froze, and they would have put a drop less or a drop more, it wouldn't have happened, and it had to be a certain type of an iceberg, you know, there's all kinds of icebergs, not all of them could sink Titanics. And one of the stories, this Chinese guy is sitting next to a Yid, and the Yid goes to the Chinese guy and gives him a zadach. He says, why'd you do that to me? He says, what do you mean what you did? You attacked Pearl Harbor. He said, that wasn't the Chinese. He says, that was the Japanese. So they said, Japanese, Chinese, it's all the same. So a few months later, the Chinese guy goes, Zetz goes, why'd you do that for me? He says to the Yid. So the Yid says, why'd you do that to me? He says, you sunk the Titanic. He says, I sunk the Titanic. He says, iceberg, Goldberg, it's all the same. You know, it's one thing. Okay. So there's a bunch of studies came out with a whole mahalach that if it wasn't this kind of an iceberg, and they didn't put in that amount of phosphorus in the metal, and it wouldn't have hit it at a certain angle, and if it wouldn't have going as fast as it did, because they made it go much faster than it was supposed to, they wanted to get to New York earlier, if all this hadn't been, and had the radio operator been on, because the ship that was nearby, if all this, right, then the ship would have not sunk. I venture to suggest it's exactly the opposite. We have a mahalach that by chance there's a disaster. But survival is a given. No, it's the other way around. The fact that we survive is a nes. The Divine Hashem is going to show us after 120 years, every second of our life was an exact science of an egg that had to be tough enough and an egg that had to be tender enough. That every single one of our emotions, our tsaris, our anxiousness, our nervousness, the good times, the bad times, it's all perfect. Survival is a nes. You know that in Shalim there's Batei Nathan. You know there's Batei Nathan and there's also Netanya. That was built by a fellow by the name of Nathan Strauss. And Nathan Strauss was a brother of Abraham Strauss, A&S, Macy's, the gift cards, and which you save so much money on. And his brother was on the ship. He was one of the richest people in the world. And he sunk, and his wife, who could have gone onto the boat, came up to be with him. And his brother Nathan was in Yerushalayim with his wife, and they were there for the purpose of Aniyah Yerushalayim, poor people in Yerushalayim, to help them. But they were booked for the Titanic, the luxury of all luxuries. And Nathan wanted to go back, and his wife said no. There's two versions. One is because they would have to have traveled on Shabbos. She said no. There's another version. She said that people are dying of hunger. You think about your luxury ship. And she convinced him to stay, which wives can do sometimes. Yeah. And at the end, he realized it saved his life, so he invested a tremendous amount of his funds into Yerushalayim. I think the city of Netanya is named after him. He was a person that owned the radio stations. He was one of the richest people. So think about this conversation between Mr. And Mrs. Nathan, right? Strauss, I'm sorry. Nathan Strauss. Schachter. It's like, he says, I'm here with these poor guys in Yerushalayim, a bunch of guys, I got the biggest ship in the world. And why am I doing this? Why am I doing it? I got to be over there. She said, we are doing this. This is what Hashem sent us down here on this world for. Between the why am I doing this and the we are doing this was the difference between life and death. And that's Hoyd Sheba Gvura. Hoyd is the song in the Gvura. Just we don't get sunk in. We say, Ain't Sayer Kilakenu. There's no painter like God. Chana said that, right? That's what this world is compared to a painting. I think the world is far more complicated than a painting. So what do we mean, Ain't Sayer Kilakenu? So I heard a mashal that there's this man, he's a fabulous artist. And he painted this beautiful series of steps and shelves. And it was so real, it was so realistic, that he took his coffee and he forgot that it was a painting and he put it on and went, whee, flying down because there was no real shelf there. He said, we get lost. We believe in our luxuries and our lives and our dreams and our talents, and we forget what it is, a mirage. Ain't Sayer Kelekenu. The Rebbeinu Shem is the painter who knows what this world is all about. It doesn't make a difference to him. It changes along those lines. Somebody told me that they bought on eBay or they were selling a dollar bill for $30,000. Because on this dollar bill, the guy wrote, I am now sinking in the Titanic. How they got the dollar bill, I don't know. So I said, imagine. This dollar bill is worth 30,000 times the amount. Why? Because he was sinking on the Titanic and he survived. How much is that mincha worth? When you're not in the mood of davening mincha and you daven. They're going to come up there to Shemayim, they're going to say, this mincha was when this person was sinking in his life. When he was about to give up, when he had nothing to live for, and he went out there and smiled and davened and put on tefillin and worked on his shalom bayis. You know how much that dollar bill is going to be worth? What it's going to be worth then, the Sefer Time of Devaira from the Ramak. Sam's Rav said it's a skula to learn the Sefer, the Mekayim the Sefer. So he talks about the midah of Netzach and Hoyd. And he explains that a person has to learn from everyone. Learn from everybody. Be a Talmud L'Koil. He says if you're a Talmud L'Koil, then the midah of Teferes is mashpiyah to Netzach and Hoyd, whatever that means. And he goes on to say, when you learn Chumash, Netzach, that gives you a power to fight. It gives you a power to go on. What I'm doing is going to last forever. When you learn the Shnayas, that gives you a power of Hoyd. It gives you a power of praise and beauty and appreciation of life. When you learn Gemara, you connect the Netzach to the Hoyd. I don't know what this means. But he goes on to say as follows. He says, you got to be careful what you talk about. You got to be careful with your speech. He says, "Ain't sarach loimish lo yadaber nevala." Person shouldn't speak nivel peh. Elafil dibur tar, even if it's pure, but if it's not as pure as it should be, don't say it, because life, as he explains it, is a series of dominoes. It goes from chesed to gvura to tferes to netzach. We go from emotion to emotion. We think the world is hefker. What does God want from me today? This trouble, then I feel good, then that trouble, good news, bad news. No, it's a sequence. And if we follow the sequence, we reach malchus. But if a person is poigem his dibur, if he doesn't speak the way he should, if our eyes aren't where it should be, if our mouth isn't where it should be, then we lose the domino effect that leads to malchus. So in this week's Sedra, Moshe Rabbeinu gets very angry. He says he starts yelling, he says, why did you burn the chatas? Doresh Moshe. Interesting. Take a look in your Chumash. This is the halfway mark of the Torah. We exactly finish right over here. Doresh Moshe. Now I would think, why did this happen to Moshe Rabbeinu? Like the one which is not so complimentary of Moshe gets angry at his nephews, pinked hair. Oh, by the way, this is the halfway mark. Nobody wants that. You're angry you're screaming at your family. Then I'm warning you. Oh, by the way, here's a picture of this guy's life. Well, not now. Don't tell me now. This is the halfway mark. Let's take a closer look. Who Moshe Rabbeinu screams at Elazar and Isamar why they burnt the chatas. They weren't supposed to. Normally, a nod of an aviv just died. They had din of an einin. Normally, an einin, a kohen gadol can't eat the carbon, but they were told you could eat. Now, first of all, Rashi says he was really angry at Aaron. But he doesn't want to scream at Aaron, because that would be pogeya in his kavod. So he screams at his nephews, which isn't as embarrassing. So that shows us how Moshe Rabbeinu's anger is controlled, and even in the time of anger, how this ability of knowing how to soften things. So it shows us really wasn't a real anger, it was just lechutz. I had a very good manal all the years. He always knew how to do it. You know, when I walked in late, and everyone was jumping all around the place, he would come in and scream at the kids, "What? Everyone's jumping around like this? And Rabbi walks in a few minutes later, he has to wait, he has to see this when he comes in?" I knew he was screaming at, you know? But he knew how to do it. In Yiddish, there's a saying, you yell at your son and you mean your son-in-law. But Akhlpanim, so Moshe Rabbeinu, okay, he's angry. So he screams at Elazar and Isamar, "Why'd you burn it?" And Elazar and Isamar respectfully answer, "You told us to eat the karbanos," which is Soyer Nachshain, and the Soyer that was for Aaron HaKayin, but it did not apply to this Soyer Chodesh, because it was Chodesh Nisan, which is Kachei Dairis. This we were supposed to burn. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Vayishma Moshe v'yita v'yenav." You know what Moshe Rabbeinu says? An amazing thing. You're right, I'm wrong. Now, Rabbi Tzaddik points out an amazing thing. You could not prove that Moshe Rabbeinu was wrong. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was never specific with Moshe Rabbeinu which one to burn. So Moshe Rabbeinu, who just made a tremendous scene, could have said, "Who says you're right?" Instead he said, there's no proof, but maybe you're right. You know, he saw the greatness of that, of what that means. I told you this many times. Rabbi Twersky wrote this book on peanuts. He has a whole chakira into each of the Charlie Brown things, which is very convenient because it cashes like they're reading the peanuts. It's only most of the part I read. But anyway, so there's a great little story there where Charlie Brown is, I don't know how we're mixing at the time of the word with all this. But anyway, he starts writing a letter, and he's writing a letter to his grandma. And he writes deer, and he spells D-E-E-R. And his sister says, "That's not the way you spell deer." Or the other way around. He says to his sister. He says, "That's not the way you spell D-E-A-R." And she turns to him and said, "You know what I was about to write? I was about to write deer are the most beautiful animals." He goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. You always criticize me. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry." As soon as he walks away, she rips it up and starts writing D-E-A-R, dear grandma, right? You know, whenever we can get away, you can't prove us wrong. And Moshe Rabbeinu, there was no way to prove that they were right and Moshe was wrong. But Moshe says, "No, vayishma Moshe v'yita b'yeinav." And Tzaddik says it's the first time Torah Shabbat Pez applied over here. This is the halfway mark of the Torah. Now, right afterwards, it says, "V'yadaber Hashem el Moshe v'la'aron leimar." Speak to Aaron. Speak to Aaron. Why is Aaron included over here? Because Aaron was quiet. At the beginning of the Seder, Aaron HaKayin lost Nadav and Avihu. In this time of Simchas, ultimate joy, he lost 2 sons. So what does the pasuk say? Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to comfort Aaron. And Moshe says to Aaron, "You should know, who Hashem dibra Hashem leimar. Hashem told me this is going to happen. B'kroi ve'akadosh, there'll be a kiddush Hashem through this." Says of Schwab, Amayr de Gevart. Look in the Chumash. Who Hashem dibra Hashem leimar. This is what Hashem said. And then there's a vertical line, which is equivalent to a, stop. Next paragraph. B'kroi ve'akadosh. This is the reason that it had to happen. Wait a second. What's that stop? It should be Hu Hashem Dibra Hashem Leimer. This is what Hashem said. B'kroi ve'akadosh. I sanctify my name through the holy ones. Why is there a stop over there? So Schwab says, Amayr de Gevart. He says, Aaron said to Moshe, he was listening to Moshe in his pain. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, Hu Hashem Dibra Hashem Leimer. This is what Hashem said. Let me explain to you why it happened. And Aaron says, stop! I don't want to know why it happened. Hashem said, that's the biggest nachama. The world is not hefker. My children were here for this point, now they have to be someplace else. You'll tell me, okay, you want to tell me. And right afterwards, Aaron is Zoicha, that what? That he gets to say which parsha? The parsha of, that no one is allowed to be drunk when they go in to do the Avodah. So it's explained as follows. Why should a guy get drunk? A guy says, I want to drink a couple of bottles of vodka and I'll daven with a real geschmack then, L'shem Shemayim, you have a guy by the Seder, someone told me, he kept saying, I don't know if I did a Seder properly, I have to re-drink, I have to keep re-drinking, we overcome, I would have made a good mood, I would have jumped, I don't know if that actually happened, but anyway, but it's a good story. So, what was Aaron HaKohen was given a power? I can make you happy. You can be besimcha, doing the avodah, without an artificial stimulus, without being drunk. That was the koyach that Aaron had for his ability of going weiter. And right afterwards, the whole family is hurt and they're in pain. And Moshe Rabbeinu comes out and he yells at them for something they didn't do. Now what happens when we get yelled at for something we didn't do? When we're hurting, you start yelling back. No, you say that to me in this massive. And Allah and the summer are so gentle and so quiet. And they explain what happened. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, you're right, I'm sorry. And right afterwards, Hashem says to the entire family, Aaron, Nadav, and Avihu, and they all say the parsha about the animals that are kosher and not kosher. They were all lifted to the highest level. And this is pshat, the halfway point. Why the halfway point? The beginning of our lives, we have energy. You know, they used to say in Lakewood, I don't know when I heard someone tell me, the greatest man is from Rosh Chodesh Iyar till Pesach Sheni. It's such a gewaldig man, right? You know, we conk out after a while. Chas v'shalom, they don't conk out. They learn geschmack. But, you know, sometimes the halfway point is so hard. It's the middle of this man. You know, it's in the middle of the, you know, you're halfway through. I'm too far from the beginning, so far from the light at the end of the tunnel. And people get nervous with each other. And then at this point, to have the courage to say what happened. It goes on, we made mistakes, nishkeferlach. That's the message over here. Now, the Gemara says a fascinating thing about the Sarah Chodesh. Why do we makriv a Sarah Rosh Chodesh? The Rebbeinu Shalom says, I need a kapara. The Rebbeinu Shalom needs a kapara. How does God need a kapara? Because I made the moon smaller. I need a kapara. You need a kapara? What does that mean? Hashem needs a, that's the Sarah Rosh Chodesh. Hashem needs a kapara. And the answer is that Hashem is teaching us something here. Rav Tzaddik, I think, explains this. It can't be God made a mistake. But God says, I need a kapara. I made the moon smaller. Because God is telling us that mistakes are not mistakes. The things that mess up in your life is part of Hashgacha. That's what Hashem is saying. And that's Rosh Chodesh. The moon gets smaller, it's supposed to get smaller. It rebuilds. And at this moment, Moshe starts screaming, the pressure, whatever it means, Moshe Rabbeinu, and Allah and the summer are hurt. Instead of saying, I'll never talk to you again, you embarrass me, and storming out to say, it's okay, let's work this out. We're going to go weiter. We're at the halfway point. We'll continue on. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kapara. Hashem says, this is the Sarah Rosh Chodesh that is mechaper on the tumah, on the most severe tumah, that we didn't know about it beforehand, we didn't know about it afterwards. It is the greatest kayak that there is. Right? Somebody said they made a light bulb, now you have to change once every 25 years. I don't know, I hate when they come out with a pair of socks like that, it's going to be big trouble. But, I think there's something wrong with the way we think, the way life goes. The light bulbs are made to change. Mistakes are made to change. So, the halfway point of words is in this week's Sedra. What's the word? By Dorish. Where's the half point of letters? Does anyone know? Also in this week's Sedra, and it says, Kol Hoylech al Gachain, every teeming creature, meaning the snake, Vik Kol Hoylech al Gachain. The Vav is the halfway point in words, and that's why, look in the Sefer Torah, the Vav is very long. It's good to know that, because somebody told me he was someplace in a hotel, and they were leaning, and they put the Sefer Torah back. This is a mistake, there's a long Vav over there. So, you gotta know that. It's supposed to be a long Vav to point out the halfway point. So again, this is the halfway point. All the snakes that are teeming, you can't eat them. It couldn't be a nicer halfway point. So the Ber Moshe, the Zohar says, that Hashem said to the snake, Al Gachain Chatelech, you're going to walk on your stomach. You have no support. So the Zohar says, when Klal Yisrael supports each other in their time of need, the Nachash remains without support. When Klal Yisrael does not back each other up in our times of need, when our nerves are a little short and we don't have patience for each other, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes that support and gives it to the snake. And that's why this is the half point of the Torah. The big Vav represents the Vav HaChibur. That our ability to survive the snake is to be mechaber amongst ourselves. It's to connect ourselves. To be part of it. No, this Shabbos is called Schlissel Shabbos. There's a minhag many people have to put a first Shabbos after Pesach. Some put a key into the challah. It's a skula for Parnasa. Once I had a guy by my table that said, this key is a skula for Parnasa. He was so excited. He said, what's the key to? I said, no, it's just like a skula. He thought it was a key to my safe deposit box or something. All right. It's explained to him what a school is. And some have a different minhag. Some have a minhag, they make the challah in the shape of a key. So that's two madregas. One madrega of B'tachan is, in my key, give it to me. I didn't give him the key, no, I don't take a chance. One madrega is that in the key, in the challah, there's a key. I'm going to go on. Life is going to go on. There's another madrega where the challah itself is the key. That whatever I'm experiencing is part of the Yeshua. Rabbi Messiah, the close of Megarav, was on a train, And they were being marched and taken someplace. Suddenly the train stopped all the way at the end of the war. And a Nazi walked in. He said, "All right, Jews, you win. Germany just surrendered." And the people were in shock. And then there was this outbreak of joy and screaming and yelling for revenge. And the people that were standing around the closing grove said, "Stop, stop, stop. Let's say Hallel." And people started jumping out the windows and running and screaming and yelling. He said, "Let's say Hallel. Let's keep our heads straight." And there were 11 people that stood around in their car around the closing grove, and they started saying Hallel. And outside they heard the crackle of machine gun fire. The Germans surrendered. But they came and said, "Okay, Jews, you're free to go," because the Jews all jumped out the window, and as they jumped out the window, in their last mitzvah, so to speak, they mowed them down. 400 people were killed, except the 11 people standing around the closing garov that were saying Hallel. There are so many times in life where we say, "That's it, I've had enough, I'm out of here." Well, relax, stop, Rabbi Shalom, help me get through this. And that Hallel, those are the moments that'll bring us the Yeshua, and bring us the Simcha, and bring us the bracha of life.